Welcome to another programming exam solution tutorial. In this second of the PESTs, I aim to lay out a few tasks for you to try in relation to the recent score system. We've identified a few things that look pretty likely. Obviously there's a name validation that is a real pain. There's looking at storing or displaying the date, or maybe some other change to the structure, but if you can make one change you can make any. Increasing to any number of scores, but that's easy peasy. Sorting the high scores or overwriting the lowest score, they both sort of do a similar job, but there's just something that feels like could be changed with that. And saving the high scores to a file, there's a few things that could be saved to a file, but that's the most obvious one. Right then, the way that the lowest score is currently placed is in the first blank location, and the way it checks for a blank location is by checking the name property of the structure. So if you haven't entered your name, you've just left it empty, it will assume that that is a blank space. Now there's a couple of strategies, to be honest with you. We could change the found space to rather than looking for name, looking for a blank score. Seems a little bit that doesn't feel right, but it's possible. The other one is a presence check on the name, which I've mentioned before, and that seems more obvious really. Just there's an input for the name. It's dead easy to do a presence check. You could either do it with not null or not equal to a zero length string, or you could do it using the length property. So in VB that'd be len, or the dot length of a string. There's a couple of options for that as well. If you don't know how to do a presence check, you really ought to. And that's fairly easy, and it's kind of asking to be in the exam really. Right then, let's have a look at how what I mean by storing and displaying the date. I'm talking about recent scores. Crucially, this only at the moment handles name and score. The date that the score happened, or the time, whatever, something like that would be quite lovely. Again, fairly straightforward. What we need to do is just add a date as a date to the recent score structure, and then there's a couple of other places to make the change. Obviously, to input that date at some stage. That could probably, that today or now. There's a few functions that you can get today's date in, or you can even have it typed in by the user. And then all you've got to do is really add any output you want, add the RecentScores.date to the output, and there's in the display score procedure there's a concatenation where it's sort of asking to be put in. So that's again really straightforward. It would test your knowledge of structures, it would test your knowledge of the code. It seems like quite a nice thing to change. Of course, it might not be the date, it might be something else. It might be, I don't know, the gender of the player, or who knows, whatever. Increase the score to 5, or obviously anything. All you've got to do is change that constant at the top of the code. And as far as I can tell, you don't need to change anything else at all. In terms of testing, it's obviously a bit of a faff if you're going to be increasing it to more than 5. I suppose they could ask it just to be the change it so you could just see the last one score, which would be fine. But yeah, it's just changing constant declaration. It kind of screams out to be, this really explains why we have these constant declarations. Now we get something a bit chunkier. Oh dear, sorting the high scores. Well, crucially, we haven't got high scores. We're storing recent scores at the moment. there is a possibility that we could sort what's already stored. So basically store the recent scores as high scores. So it becomes recent high scores, if you like. I had a look at that, and it's a bit of a faff. You could use a bubble sort, or you could just use swapping, as long as it's only 3. But if we just use this sort of swapping procedure, which is fine for 3, just using a simple logic statement and swapping them out, you can't then start changing the number of recent scores. So really, if we're going to be doing this, we ought to use an algorithm that can handle any number, and that's, well, bubble sort's the one you've learned. However, there is another strategy. This is what I'm going to show you. We can create a completely new structure called T high scores. We can create a new procedure that basically is identical to the recent score procedure, update recent score procedure I should say, but works for the high score and works to store the high score if it's greater than the current lowest high score. The logic of that's not too bad. If you look at it, you can basically almost mimic the previous the current recent scores procedure. Then there's just a lot of faffing and tweaking, which kind of makes me feel it's not going to be the exam. Who knows? But it was a lot of faff. Possibly a simpler way of doing it is to keep the recent scores, but have a sort of convenient just overwriting the lowest score. And in fact, this is the strategy of the last way I've done it, but rather than trying to order them, we just search for we just basically use a find the minimum type algorithm, like you've probably done with arrays. Find the maximum value, find the minimum value. So find the minimum value, store the array location. If your current score is greater than that, then just overwrite it, and not really bother that it's not really bother that they're not sorted. It's just got the last few scores with that are the highest, really. So that's a simpler way of doing it. But again, it doesn't feel very satisfactory. There's something too faffy about it all. But I will create a PEST to do that, because certainly this one was quite easy, and I'll show you how to do it in the solutions to these, because apart from anything else, it will D and E will really sort of help you get your head around the logic of of changing the score system. Also, the reason why I'll do this one is because there's a little bit of things that they will ask you to create a new structure. Maybe not this, but something else. Okay, and the last one, save scores to a file. In previous years, some centres have had problems saving files from VB because they use virtual machines, etc. But it's in the syllabus, could be done. Reasonably easy. In VB, you're just going to create a new procedure, pass the recent scores, open a file, and crucially in VB, if you're just using the file open system that the exam board recommend, it creates the file if it doesn't exist if you're using the output mode. And then print each row, just do a loop and print each row of the recent scores. Close the file, maybe give the user a nice little message to say that it's been safely filed. Be quite easy for you to go to the debug bin, the bin debug folder and do a screenshot of the file being created. It's possible. It's possible. Right, have a go. I'm going to create a video of these solutions, and I'll be posting them. Some of them are already on the Wikibook. Some of them are already discussed on the student room. Some of them are already elsewhere. If you have a bit of a Google, you should be able to find them. And hopefully you enjoy working these out. It's worth persevering with these, because that recent score system is going to be feature in the exam somewhere. I'm fairly sure of that. Don't know how, but it's an integral part of the program. Right, all the best.